Is it just me, or is it getting all drastic in here? Foreign policy whack-a-mole is heating up again, and as soon as you get a lovely, glistening Gaza ceasefire, the next thing you know, Putin is this close to shooting as 8,000 Russian troops join their sneaky comrades on the eastern Ukraine border. What did you expect? Vlad the blackmailer was going to bust out a banjo and start crafting apologetic musical haiku? The guy is a professional agitator, a serial narcissist, a one-man monkey wrench, and he's going to do whatever he can to either grease and flex his pecs or drive us so insane we have no other recourse than to start dropping bows on him. I'd like to send him to Liberia and encourage him to start kissing and petting the sweaty people. We'll count down a few more enemies of freedom and keep your baby from crying. Yes, we're that good. This is The Independence. Hi there, I'm Kennedy, your hostess. Thank you very much for being here. I'm joined by the pensive and effervescent Reason Magazine editor-in-chief Matt Welch and the gorgeously fiery Kmele Foster from Free Think Media. Together we are The Independents. As fast as the rockets fall to earth, so the boots leave the ground in Gaza and a fragile, tense ceasefire begins. It's about 13 years old at this point. Miraculously, both sides seem to be adhering. Looks like John Kerry won't get to ring his no bell on this go-round. And we have to ask, did anyone win this one? Let's put it to our man-happy party panel. Look who we've got in the studio tonight. It's Michael Malice in blue and white, author of Dear Reader, and he's joined by former Republican Congressman Thaddeus McCotter of Michigan. All right, so gentlemen, what do you think? Is there now peace in the Middle East?
For the moment, I think. We have live updates coming into the studio because usually these things don't last more than an hour or so. I think that this is a good development. Interestingly, Jimmy Carter had a piece in Foreign Policy today, which got reported in a few different places as if Jimmy Carter was saying Hamas is good and wonderful. I think what he actually said is there are plenty of bad and deplorable things that happened on both sides. And I hate to invoke historical parallels, but he says that Israel, if they want to achieve a peace that will last there, that they may in fact, interesting, that they may in fact have to recognize Hamas as a political entity. And it's a point that I've made a little earlier on this show at points in the past, that when you have a military campaign, your goal is not to annihilate your opponent and kill all of them. It is to reach a point where a political solution is palatable, where it's obtainable. And with the ANC, for example, which was a terrorist organization, African National Congress in South Africa, which was a terrorist organization up until about 2008, if I'm not mistaken. They were removed from the terrorist watch list, so folks who were members of the ANC could fly on planes in the United States without being harassed. Look, it's not palatable, it's not ideal, it's not wonderful, but political solutions are the goal that we ought to be working towards.
And you're shaking your head, Michael Malice.
No,
okay, yeah, we don't want peace or political goals.
I don't think that's the goal of necessarily every military
for me,
campaign.
but I'm pretty good at speaking for myself. That's why I'm on the show. One of the, to quote Newt Gingrich, that loathsome man, if you're quoting Jimmy Carter as your exemplar of foreign policy, what was that the quote, that you're living this delusional la la land that has no bearing to reality? I do not agree that peace is the goal. I think historically, if you look at Japan, if you look at Germany, the way to stop one of these cultures that's based on violence and aggression is to bomb them back into the Stone Age, and that's the only way to keep this kind of thing from happening again. It's been happening for 70 years. You could have ceasefires all you want, but until these people are beaten to submission, this is going to keep happening. And if you ask me to choose between the Israelis who had gays in the military in like the 80s and Hamas, who have the death penalty for selling land to the Israelis, I will always side with my tribe.
I just think you have to decide who the hell these people are. Is it the 1.2 million people that live in Gaza, or is it the, I don't know, 4, 5, maybe 10,000 if I'm generous, people who are actual militants who are associated with Hamas that live in Gaza? If that's the case, that's less than 1% of the population, and blowing the whole place to the Stone Age doesn't actually fix that problem.
I'm glad you're raising your voice, but my point is Hamas was not imposed by some other nation, and they don't represent the populace at large.
I didn't say that.
The children's TV shows...
I didn't say that.
Well, you implied it. The children's TV shows in these areas talk brazenly about killing all the Jews. So this is not some kind of alien ideology.
That's fine.
It's fine? Okay. That's fine. I don't agree that that's fine.
No, actually, I'm saying the point that you made was fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
One question I have about the Stone Age thing, besides the...
Is it there already?
Well, they're there already,
I mean,
but
that's
also...
kind of, it's a good point. They are not a very wealthy people, not that the point of the conflict is to make them wealthy. Go ahead.
Well, poverty is not an accomplishment.
But Imagine the situation where you do bomb them to the Stone Age and you cut them off from trade with their neighbors and everything else, and you cut off their supply to the outside world, and they basically have nothing except foreign aid from Iran and from other places that are basically ne'er-do-wells.
And North Korea.
What is the road map, to use a terrible word, by which they get to a normal place, a better place, a healthy, peaceful place, if you impose those kinds of conditions?
Well, I think you're right, and I think it behooves these moderate Muslim nations to kind of help out and put that roadmap forward. And Egypt has absolutely been trying to do that, but again, Egypt does not want these people to come to Egypt, and there's a good reason with that. I think they've got a better perspective on Hamas and the Palestinians than we do.
Let's bring that into this. You've listened
thanks for that.
You're welcome. I mean, it's getting kind of tense. I didn't want to soil your.
Well, no, to the original question, which Kmele was addressing, it's a cessation of the immediate violence. It's a lessening of some of the suffering that's going on. But until it is realized that the Jewish state's existence cannot be eradicated from the face of the earth, they have to defend their borders. They have to defend their citizens. They've shown restraint in this. This was not a recreation of the incursion into Lebanon and some of the atrocities that took place there. But the one thing that I would encourage people, and I know it's very difficult because of the immediacy of the images that come out of the situation, is to forget the reason for the existence of the state of Israel. And this is particularly true amongst younger people. I'm not saying you, but in the polling that is shown is the historical existence of Israel and the suffering for thousands of years that precipitated it, and the need for a Jewish homeland to defend yourselves against people who for millennia have tried to kill you and scapegoat you. Now that's the reality of the situation. So when your reconciliation, which you're right, military is used to take irreconcilable differences and try to create the terms for a political conciliation or enforced decision, the Palestinians have to understand Israel will not be eradicated from the face of the earth, the extremists. And when that happens, you will continue to see Israel then engage them. And I think the United States will be very happy to help.
Last year was a more peaceful year in that particular region of the world. There were far fewer rockets fired, if nothing else.
They were busy digging tunnels.
Do you think, and this is a very serious question, they've been digging tunnels for several years, and part of that is to try to evade the blockades. And before they were used for terrorist attacks, they were used for that.
And they're using them to kidnap Israeli soldiers now.
Well,
in coordinated attacks. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The question I wanted to get to rather quickly, if I can, is whether or not when Fatah and Hamas were actually moving closer together and trying to forge a political alliance of sorts, if that wasn't a period when we might have actually been able to get, again, closer to a political solution rather than having hostilities go up. Might that have been a time to tamp down some of the resistance to engage in them?
That's a very good question, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but look, people don't like to share power, even within the PA. So what you're seeing with the United States support for some of the Arab Spring movements, some more of the radical sector, the Muslim Brotherhood and others, is you start to isolate people like Abbas. You start to isolate people like Fatah. And you start to give more room for the extreme wing to come in, such as Hamas, and especially because Fatah was corrupt. We know that. And then it allowed Hamas to get under him at the street level. And so I don't know that it's going to be a merger of the two.
We have about 20 seconds.
Well, I was just going to say I fundamentally agree with Kmele because something he said earlier, which is, or when we spoke off camera, that Hamas has a vested interest in presenting itself as we're the ones defending the Palestinians against the Israelis. So they're not in a really position to go in a peace process because then they'd cease to have an excuse for existing.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the Palestinians have shown that they're sick of Hamas representing them because they don't represent their interests. They are a terrorist organization.
But there is hope. The IRA showed that. The British showed that. When people get tired of seeing their children killed for nothing, then peace is achievable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're in agreement.
And we have other things to achieve with our government. And here's a shock. Government health care creates a further bifurcated system that now exacerbates the benefits and lack thereof between the haves and have-nots. The reimbursement rate for the exchange plans under Obamacare is now on par with Medicare. And that means doctors hardly make any money, so they're going to stop taking Obamacare insurance. Add to that, the Department of Health and Human Services is having a hard time vetting applicants who are looking for subsidies. The system is ripe for scammers, but at least there are more insured people who can get crappier care. And this is, I mean, it's really genuinely dangerous because the good hospitals like in LA, Cedars-Sinai, that offers the best cancer treatment, they won't take Obamacare. And that means automatically if you're diagnosed with a serious condition and you're on an exchange like I am, it means you automatically get substandard care.
Obamacare sped up the process that was already happening with Medicare, is that we're creating a two-tiered system in this country. We have the NHS, like the British National Health Service, on one hand, and then we have this free market-ish American like high-quality healthcare on the other, and that's just growing and growing, that divide there, and it's a damn dirty shame.
As the payments to doctors are shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah, if you're a great doctor, why would you put up with all this kind of centralization, filling out all these codes, and getting crappy reimbursement?
And single-payer insurance will only lead to doctors getting out of the medical profession and younger people not choosing to become doctors in the
All
first
of the
place.
dysfunction suggests to me that the fundamental problem was never the fact that people didn't have insurance. It's that we do not actually have a functioning market for healthcare services. And that's what's happening here. People get insurance, they rush to the ER. Prices are starting to do all sorts of weird and strange things, strains on services. We need a genuine market for healthcare services in this country, not a lurch towards single payer.
Yes.
Any political intervention in the economy is trying to avoid the basic economic fact that poor people are going to have less things and worse things. And what happens is they just say, well, you can't have anything that's bad or anything that's not this level of quality. So just like with the minimum wage, if you say, I can't pay someone $10, it's not like those jobs are going to be paying $15. Those jobs are just going to cease to exist. And you're seeing that here. If you raise the minimum level of care, then all those people who had some semblance of care are not going to have anything.
Yeah, the problem with Obamacare has always been, from a fundamental economic standpoint, is it tries to destroy the law of supply and demand. I mean, you have a finite supply of health care due to government regulation, trial lawyers, whatever, and you have an increasing demand, baby boomers, America growing. And so what they tried to do was try to constrict the supply to reduce the demand, hence the lack of payments to smaller providers, and of course the comparative effectiveness research boards, which will decide who gets treatment and who doesn't because of their cost to the government that's supposed to work for them. So if you look at it, this is exactly what many of us argued at the time, is it's going to leave people worse off because it's a 19th century bureaucratic status solution in the age of the internet. It's crazy. In the age of empowerment, individual empowerment, you're going to let people pick their doctor. And I used to tell kids, and when I talked to them in schools, they wouldn't throw me out, at least at first, is, would you let the government program your iPod? No. Would you let the government tweet out on Twitter for you? No. Would you let them put your friends on Facebook? No. I said, then you let them pick your doctor.
Yeah, why would you do that? And your healthcare and the menu of services, no, it's absolutely absurd. You guys are great, and we're going to have you back a little later on. Panel, Michael and Thad, they're going to get to know each other in the green room and come up with the official secret handshake for the night for the independence. All right, the troop buildup on Ukraine's eastern border could be problematic. These Russians are pouring into Donetsk like hungry ants on barbecue sauce. We'll take you to Putin's picnic next.
Thank you for letting me be myself again.
That's not good. Ooh, baby, that's nasty is what that is. A huge troop surge in Russia now threatens Ukraine's eastern border as Russia appears to be flipping the diplomatic bird to Ukraine and the rest of us. This latest buildup practically doubles the ready troops. So is it mind games, war games, or is it on? Joining us is the Independent's favorite foreign policy expert. It's Michael Weiss, editor-in-chief of The Interpreter. So, ISIS was the big terror at the beginning of the week. Late last week, it was Israel and Hamas. And now Ukraine heating up again.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Russians have pulled troops away from the border, and now they put some back. So at the height, it was at something like 40,000. Now it's up to maybe as much as 20,000, which is bad. And not just that, but the nature of the troops that they've stationed at the border. These are the guys who would mount an invasion.
The hardest core.
The hardest core.
That's different than the 40,000 before?
I think there are additional troops. Russia has undergone this sort of modernization program of its military, which had been a terrible state of decline, particularly after the Georgia War. That was what demonstrated just how bad they were. The fact that they won that war is probably the only war they could have won. So Putin has invested billions and billions of dollars into kind of revitalizing his armed services. And actually, the defense minister in Russia is the most popular cabinet minister, and he's rumored to be the successor to Putin, Mr. Shoigu.
They get to have successors now.
They get to have successors, naturally. And, the other thing is the Ukrainians say, well, actually, if you count Crimea, which let's not forget about Crimea, right? Yeah. That's 40,000 or 45,000 troops, because Russia could actually invade mainland Ukraine from Crimea. It's just very easy to go right across that.
Or they could meet in the middle.
Or they could meet in the middle, yeah. But, the important thing to understand is, why is this happening now? Well, even after MH17, which was, 3 weeks ago, The Russians sent more tanks, more anti-aircraft systems, such as the Buk, which shot down the plane. They've rocketed Ukraine from Russian territory. At the Interpreter, we broke this story the day that MH17 happened, Grad missiles being fired. Just recently this week, about over 400 Ukrainian servicemen were cornered at the border, and they went over to the other side. They went to Russia. And Russia has this refugee camp that they hosted these guys in. And there was all this disinformation and propaganda. They defected, they were seeking asylum, and they put down their weapons because they were exhausted. Well, it turns out they ran out of ammunition, and they had been cornered and assaulted by the separatists. So, the important thing, too, is we don't know everything that's happening on the Ukrainian side of that border. It's not very well populated. All the social media stuff, the YouTube videos, the photographs, much of that doesn't come out. So what I think is happening is Russia is doing what I'd call a drip-drip invasion.
Okay.
Erase the border, move your guys steadily over the line, put all the material in, all that, and then eventually say, well, we sent in peacekeeping forces because Ukraine couldn't get its stuff together.
Well, Mike, and that's the sort of sarcastic response I heard from the State Department pretty recently, that Russia is going to send in peacekeeping officers. But I mean, if military people come in and there is a cessation of aggression, violence in that particular region, I mean, that seems like it's not a terrible thing.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be that. I mean, remember, when Russia...
Yeah, why would you send in your special forces to do your peacekeeping?
And, I mean, look, this would essentially be a conventional backing of an unconventional or guerrilla-style insurgency, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, but again, the government that's in Kiev right now, I mean, it got there in a similar sort of situation.
Well, I mean...
They overthrew a government, and then they sort of took over. And it's strange to me, and I don't want to repeat myself from the last segment, but political solution for a situation that is tense and very violent. The government in Kiev has, in fact, gone on the offensive against these separatists and said, hey, we're going to bring you to bear, bring you under boot, as opposed to trying to find a political solution.
Well, no, they did do that.
Folks.
They did try a political solution. There was a ceasefire. It was broken by the separatists within hours. Remember, look, if Putin wanted a political or peaceful solution to this crisis, and President Obama has said this, Samantha Power has said this, former Ambassador Michael McFaul has said this in a Twitter exchange today with the Russian Foreign Ministry, just pull your guys out of East Ukraine. I mean, remember, these are not just pro-Russian Ukrainian separatists. Many of them are Russian nationals, okay? The Prime Minister of the People's Republic of Donetsk, he was in Moscow for weeks. He's just come back.
Why not have Egypt broker this ceasefire as well?
Well, yeah, it was funny because there's been a protest in Siberia talking about the federalization of Russia. And remember, this is one of the talking points of the Russian Foreign Ministry. We need federalization in Ukraine, wink, wink. We'll create our own autonomous zone. So I'm like, fine, let Petro Poroshenko be the mediator for federalism in Siberia. I mean, like, if Russia's going to give this stuff, it might as well receive it as well. So
I think the only thing they want to receive is more blabble out of Putin's mouth, because they seem to fall in love with everything that falls from his lips.
And they want to hide, they're protecting their money.
Yeah.
There's an oligarch who we sanctioned, Gennady Timchenko, who gave an interview this week or last week, and he said, no, of course, we're not going to pull our assets out of Russia. Mr. Putin is doing everything he has to. This is for the defense of the motherland and all this stuff. So this is a signal to the West.
Yeah.
All the sanctions you want doesn't matter.
All right. Michael Weiss, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Hopefully
Thanks.
we'll see you again very, very soon. Last night we so hard for me to contain myself because I want to dance. That was Mike Snow. Mike with two eyes. It's not a guy, it's a band. And the song's called Sylvia, and it's really good. And you should download it right now and thank me later. This is The Independence, where we are gearing up for our big annual Enemies of Freedom show a week from Friday. We're going through our cherry-picked list of 25 freedom haters. And we're up to number 22. It's our least favorite Cuban, Fidel Castro. He and his suspicious beard came to power in 1959. And although there's an argument to be made that he's just Weekend at Bernie's now, he's still around. His brother Raul runs the least free country in the Western Hemisphere that has zero tolerance for political speech and demonstration, widespread prison abuses, political prisoners, travel restrictions, and an abhorrent human rights record to boot.
5% of the population applies to come to America every year. Think about that. On that island, it's a prison. They want to leave. People are trying to leave. There's a committee for the defense of the revolution on every single block. It's the secret police informing on you, sending you to jail. He used to put gays in camps. He's an awful, awful, awful human being. And anyone who apologizes for him should be deeply, deeply ashamed of themselves.
And you lived in Cuba. You lived there. You
for a couple of months.
Know this, yeah. Well, still, it's a lot more time than most of us spend. Second. At number 21, it's not a who, but a what. It's Michelle Obama's allegedly well-intentioned Let's Move campaign. And sure, the First Lady wants to fat-shame you into feeling like a bad parent of chubby kids, but she also uses her passive-aggressive First Lady bully pulpit to say things like, quote, it's so important for our schools to make the hard calls for our kids because parents are struggling enough at home. Yes, you hulking morons, while you're busy beefing up Junior, the Princeton and Harvard-educated Duchess will be gracious enough to tell your kids what to eat because they're as dumb as you are. No more bake sales, no buttery popcorn, just miserable children who will be nursing eating disorders all through public school.
You're making Kmele sad. He really likes Michelle Obama.
I mean,
It's not about her, it's about the campaign.
But there's a rich tradition of this sort of thing among the spouses of presidents and vice presidents.
Yeah, enough of that.
They always go out and they find something to crusade against. Some of these things are horrible and deplorable things like teen violence, but other things like horrible hip-hop music with all of its nasty words, like Tipper Gore was not a particular fan of that stuff. Seriously, get over yourself. Stop ruining school lunch and all sorts of other
Just do what Dennis Thatcher did. What did he do?
Exactly. Maybe he hung out and painted pictures of cats, like George W. Bush does now. All right, number 20 on our list is one of the most dangerous kinds of leftists, the commie economist. He's an ecommunist. Nobel Prize winner Paul Krugman. He loves deficit spending and straw man arguments. He's a giant fallacy wrapped up in bad policy who uses unbelievably implausible math and data to sell the bankrupt idea that the state should be doing nothing but spending your money. He famously held up the VA as the shining example of a government-run healthcare success story. He is the DMV of economists.
The thing that he does that's especially notorious, look, people are going to disagree with you and me and everybody else about economics. That's normal. That's healthy. What he does is that he takes the absolutely worst arguments from his oppositions. He doesn't even pretend to understand people. He has said and written, you know what? I don't see anybody in the Tea Party protesting the Wall Street bailouts. What?
Yeah.
He's not paying any attention to the people that he's punching in the face rhetorically every week. It's deeply, deeply dishonest, and it coarsens the discourse in this country, and we should expect better from someone who is actually a really good global trade economist.
A very, very good technical economist who, at this point, only seems to excel at sharpening his ad hominems and tossing them at people who disagrey with him, calling them stupid, poo-poo head, just about anything
Very
you can
adolescent
imagine. In the
his
wonderful
attacks on
grand
him.
pages of the New
What
York
did you
Times.
call him? An ecommunist?
I did. I thought it was very
That was
clever.
funny. That's actually funny.
Thank you. Kmele.
Yeah,
I am
got
proud
your
of you
back.
every day, Kmele.
Exactly.
Every day.
You know.
I do know. Believe me. Justin Bieber as predator. Sorry, Justin Bieber as predator repellent. He's not a predator. Rand Paul eats and runs away. And Katy Perry is the best babysitter on earth. It is the topical storm next. While you're digesting the more substantial news, think of this as the digestive. This is the topical storm. Topic number 1, the chupacabra lives in Disneyland. A mysterious four-legged white animal is perplexing, dare I say terrorizing, residents near Anaheim, California. At first, the video seems to show a mountain lion, which are quite common all over Southern California. But upon further inspection of the grainy frames, it's obvious that's no cougar. It looks like an African lion, or even a snow leopard, or more outlandishly, a dog.
It's a dog.
Now, if it were a cougar, it would probably be very attracted to Kmele, and it would want to buy him drinks and say filthy things.
That happens occasionally.
That's totally just a California white mountain lion. Trying out every canyon.
No, not with that tail.
Really? Is the tail?
Look at the tail.
Oh, you're right. The tails are usually a little stubby, friends.
Look at that tail. That's
a dog. It's totally a dog.
100% a dog.
I mean, that's,
you know, upon seeing it,
Is that
at
Knox?
first I was
that's what
like,
Knox looks like when he walks.
at first I thought it was a Siberian tiger,
Yeah,
and I was really
totally a
freaked
dog.
out, and I was like,
So
I'm,
Kmele has
Don't
a
worry.
dog that big in his New York apartment, which is like this big.
80-odd pounds.
and he yells at it over the computer, and the dog doesn't listen.
He doesn't listen.
It's like the
But
rest
he's
of us.
adorable. He's adorable.
Topic number 2, a Russian man was minding his own business, just fishing in the middle of nowhere, when he was pounced on and mauled by a giant bear. The man-eater was having his way with the lonely angler when, by some strange twist of fate, the man's phone rang and his ringtone happened to be automatic bear repellent. It is the single most offensive sound to mammals, and even the bear recognized the toxicity of the shrill notes. It was Justin Bieber's Baby. For all we know, the bear could have been starving, but he got an earful of that tiny Canadian, stopped snacking, and ran like hell. Justin Bieber. Hey, everybody. Bear's like, no, it bleeds.
This is what it's like to sit next to Kmele when he's what is it? Drill music? What's the hell is that stuff called?
You know,
I am like the bear running in the opposite direction and no longer eating nice Russian people's faces.
Sure, I have some current taste in music. Occasionally, I listen to things that are a little off.
When's the last time you bought
nasty,
music
aggressive.
of this millennium?
Yeah, Matt.
Last time?
Put him on the defensive. That's what I'm talking about.
Wilco's kind of this millennium with a beer gut, right?
Sure. Make yourself feel better. Topic number 3, Rand Paul was fundraising for his friend Iowa Republican Steve King when the two were approached at lunch by, get this, a dreamer. The woman may have well just touched down from Sierra Leone covered in her own feces, asking Rand for a hug, the way the Kentucky senator took off running mid-bite.
I'm actually a dreamer myself, and I'm originally from Mexico, but I've been raised here. I graduated from Arizona State University, actually, and Arizona State University. And I know you want to get rid of DACA, so I want to give you the opportunity if you really want to get rid of it.
She was on our show, wasn't she?
She was on our show. Oddly enough, he wasn't.
Weird. Shocking.
Which makes her pretty
One
great.
of those people was on our show.
But as soon as she said, I'm a dreamer, and hands in the card, he's like, I'm out of here. Dreamer, no, go.
In fairness,
Sweet girl.
they said he had an urgent appointment there. I mean, part of it is he's sitting next to Steve King.
An urgent appointment.
Rand Paul and Steve, these people don't have a lot in common politically,
Yeah, it's not.
including about immigration. He ran.
Yeah, just sit there, shake your hand, and be nice. All right, topic number 4. Any parent of a fussy baby knows the desperation of wanting to calm and quiet their child, especially when they're strapped in their car seat. And watch this little girl's reaction when her mom starts playing Katy Perry's hit song, Dark Horse. It is so cute.
Let's rage.
Yeah. Throw your hands in the air. She's so excited.
I hope she wasn't coached. Because, like,
No.
she was hitting the
can't
mark.
coach
Coach.
that.
You can't be
You
coached.
can't coach
no,
that.
with that,
That
the
was
music
genuine.
is inside that child.
that's
and
beautiful.
kids just respond to certain things.
Doesn't Katy Perry work for your daughters as well in a similar
Oh,
fashion?
my daughters, they love Katy Perry. And
That is a terrible dance.
the funny thing is,
Such a good dance.
Oh, she looks like the Marshmallow Man.
so sweet.
The Stay
How
Puft Marshmallow.
dare you?
Wow.
You take that.
She does,
back,
like her
Kmele
legs.
Foster.
It's cute.
She's a
Stay
baby.
Puft.
Okay, Michelle Obama.
Whoa.
Wow.
Facts.
Cute baby.
Hashtag facts.
Adorable.
Dude, I wish I got that excited. I really do. All right, now coming to the stage, it's Calvin Harris. I actually did that at Lollapalooza this weekend. I should apologize to the people behind me. Speaking of Ebola, more rumors, more people getting tested in this country, and whatever happened to that sick and sweaty patient in the New York City hospital. Our panel is back to discuss. Stay with us.
If it keeps on raining, love is going to break. When the levee breaks, have no place to stay.
And into Alt J, it's Canadian night. I love it. All right, health officials don't want anyone to panic about Ebola. I should be very serious here. But there's not a stateside epidemic, so don't tell that to Indiana Congressman Todd Rokita. He thinks those border kids are at risk of bringing the deadly West African virus over the border along with scabies and tuberculosis. My God. He really said that. No, I'm not making that up. I'm not putting words into his mouth. I'm originally a Hoosier and still shocked. Our panel is back, Michael and Thaddeus. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So are you, I mean, you seem very calm given the medical climate in this country about Ebola.
Yes, disinterest often passes for apathy. Look, I think he made a horrible mistake trying to use Ebola to highlight the situation on the border. The reality is, as we've talked about and other people have talked about, is you have these children, as a great and generous and compassionate country, want to make sure they get their treatment, that there doesn't cause any spillover problems. They're well. We're bringing them into the country. And I think that when you use examples like that to make a point, you wind up one of Kennedy's monologues. You're kind of screwed.
In order to defeat your own purpose.
Pretty clear, yeah. No, I mean, the Ebola thing is pretty interesting to watch. Like, half the people on Twitter are saying, stop freaking out, and the other half people on Twitter like, freak out.
Stop the
Because you
Ebola.
can't find the symptoms. We've talked about it here with actual medical professionals. It's good to be a rich country. You know, it's good to be a country where people go seek medical care, and if things are going bad, you get quarantined and submit to it.
And by the way, you get treated right away, which is one of the ways you...
by good doctors, and you're not messing around with blood and feces, generally speaking.
And we tend
you're
to
Gigi
not
Allen.
wash our
true.
dead
He didn't
ourselves.
live that long.
Well, I would disagree a little bit. In his superb book, The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt talks about how hygiene is one of the axes that politicians use to move and influence. And it worked very well when Occupy Wall Street was stigmatized as being dirty. Nixon used it with the dirty hippies. North Korea used it in great effect, that South Korea is dirty and we're keeping it clean. So, yeah, there might be a backlash among the intelligentsia, but politically it's a very, very effective move to stigmatize a group that you don't have anything to do with.
It's obvious what the right is doing with the border kids.
Sure.
You know, it's like once you start playing pin the tail on the donkey with Ebola onto these kids, it's like, that's not where it comes from. Like, it's never been transmitted in the Western Hemisphere.
But
that's actually insane.
But a stupid person's vote counts just as much as a smart person's vote.
Spoken like a true intelligentsia.
Yeah, I agree.
But when you look, these are
Not
kids.
Thad McCotter.
These are kids. Yes. How dare you accuse me of intelligence? No. these kids. These are kids. And anytime you try to say something bad about children, especially ones suffering under these circumstances, it will not inure to your political benefit over time, because the vast majority of Americans are kind-hearted people, despite the fact.
What about Ryan White? I mean, remember that? I mean, that
kid who had AIDS?
Yeah, I mean, they kicked him out of school, and everyone, would say this is an injustice. But when they were back home, they're like, "I'm glad he's not in the school with my kids."
Yeah, but then we move on, don't we? We're
by the way,
Ryan White Americans.
Yeah, after he died, 30 years later.
If we're going to be honest, health crises are very NIMBY issues.
Yes,
totally, and also this use of using health crisis to demonize immigrants has a long, storied pedigree here, including in passing a whole lot of laws that end up really negatively affecting all American, native-born Americans from the progressive era through the New Deal to today.
And just
that's why colonialization existed in the first place. Because, they wanted to tame and wash the dirty savages. Yeah.
Well, they also wanted to exploit the hell out of everything they had.
And the natural resources, like, wow, gold is neat and chocolate is yummy. Fun. Let's take that for ourselves. Motorized skateboards, speaking of which, have been illegal in California for the better part of 40 years, but now a rogue lawmaker wants to lift the ban so people can quickly propel themselves on motorized sidewalk surfers. A lot of people have already been clean-burning, battery-powered skateboarding for quite some time, but you get a cranky cop who knows the law, and you're looking at jail time, bud, maybe even solitary. Assembly Bill 2054 could finally re-legalize this soon-to-be thriving form of locomotion, and I personally want to give you toes on the nose, bros. Double high five, California legislators, for making this one work.
I hope they do it. I mean, everything else in California recently has been trying to criminalize everything that we did in our California
Especially
childhoods.
something fun at the beach. I mean, you've written about this extensively.
I mean, you can't light a fire on the beach anymore in almost every single California beach.
You can't light a fire. You can't play beach volleyball. You can't bury yourself up to your neck in sand as the tide's coming in.
You can't put bottle rockets with M80s and shoot them at your friends
or frenemies.
It would be a mistake not to mention that there is a wonderful documentary short at Reason TV about this very topic, and people should watch it.
Absolutely. Go to
after the show.
Early and often.
Watch it.
It's a great place to sit, educate yourself, and watch some fine videos. You're smiling. That means you're happy.
Well, I think this would be the plot to the ultimate 80s movie where you combine Back to the Future with the hoverboards and Footloose, where you have this young rebel fighting against the man, and hopefully someone will take this idea and run with it.
Or at least skate with it.
Oh, I set myself up for that one.
You set yourself up.
You really did.
Oh.
All right, well, gentlemen, you are coming back for the after show, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
That's very good to hear, and I am certainly looking forward to it. It's been a fine discussion, a lot of ground covered, and we're just getting warmed up. Are border kids the biggest crisis for Americans? One economist says absolutely not. But is he out of his immigrant-loving mind? We will find out next.
3 straight days.
after I got born again. It felt strange, but it was nice and peaceful, and it really pleased me to be around so many people. Of course, half of them were vicious. You're riding high in April.
Hello and welcome back. What are the short and long-term impacts of housing thousands of kids coming to our country unaccompanied? And is there good news in here somewhere? Ben Powell certainly thinks so. He's the director of the Free Market Institute at Texas Tech University. He's also a senior fellow with the Independence Institute, or the Independent Institute. Is there an S on there or no? I'm not sure. Okay, Ben, I'm glad you're here.
No S on there. You guys are the Independence
Institute. Very good. Thank you for the clarification. You've written for Huffington Post about the border crisis. You say children at the border are not a crisis for America. Explain this to us, please, because there are people on the right and the left who are trying to build this into as much of a crisis as possible to either get more money or push their agenda. How is it not a crisis?
Sure. Politicians always love trying to make a big deal out of anything, call it a crisis to advance whatever partisan agenda that they have. But just perspective here, from an American taxpayer's perspective, not from the immigrant children's, but from the Americans, this is just a big yawn. We're talking total numbers here, an increase of about 8,000 more children than there were last year. In total, all of the unaccompanied children coming to the border, under 50,000 this year. Perspective, before the recession, we had 1.5 million illegal border attempt crossings in the United States from Mexico. Our net flow of immigrants from Mexico has now turned negative. More people move to Mexico than come from Mexico. So 50,000 Central American kids, this is, just a drop in the bucket compared to what we've seen in the past.
Now, if it's only a drop in the bucket, and we'll get into why you think this could have a net benefit in this country, then why is the president asking for so many billions of dollars? I mean, as we pointed out on this show before, it's almost as much money as we give to Israel in an entire year. Almost $4 billion. How is that not a crisis? And if it were only 8,000 kids, why would you need so much money to deal with the inflow?
8,000 more kids, 50,000 total. But the problem is the way the government handles it, where they're putting these kids in camps and trying to manage it themselves. Most of these kids show up to the United States with a piece of paper or written onto their belt, an address and name of people in the United States that they're headed towards. If the government simply freed them to go to those people, there would be no $3.7 billion that Obama needs. Instead, he wants to centrally plan and manage these immigrants. That's the problem.
Hey, Ben, have we done studies of, I know that you point to studies where immigrants are net benefit to the economy, illegal immigrants too. Have there been studies done on basically immigrant orphans, unaccompanied immigrant children, and their kind of net economic impact on America?
Not good scholarly studies that I'm aware of on that, but the more general point on this is immigration overall is a benefit to existing native-born Americans, but it's modest as a percent of our economy. What most people worry about is that these kids are going to be a giant tax burden, but that's very short-sighted. Every child, including my own, is a net tax consumer for the first 18 to 20 some odd years of their life. Over time, the real question is are these new immigrants going to be a net burden over their lifetimes? And most serious economic studies that look at that and account for the life cycle of beginning being a tax consumer, then being a tax producer, and then at the end of your life being a tax consumer again, and take account for the fact that these immigrants boost the profits of other businesses that pay more taxes, some find a slight fiscal cost, some find a slight fiscal benefit, but they're all close to zero, and zero is the middle.
I agree with you in the overall benefit of immigration in this country for Americans. I totally agree with that point. And my fear, as your logic has pointed out, the economy in Mexico has improved. So remittances are down, border crossings are down from Mexico. And when the drug war winds down, because either we're not fighting it or more drugs are legal in this country, that means it's not going to fund the corruption in places like Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Their economies will improve. So in the short term, the kids will get free education and free health care because thanks to a new entitlement called Obamacare, and maybe DACA will influence that as well. So they'll take the resources, and then when their country's economies improve, they'll go back to Central America, and that sucks for us.
Yeah, Kennedy, I'm all on board with you, except I'm not going to call it our war on drugs because I'm pretty sure you and I haven't been fighting it.
No.
The U.S. government's unwinnable war on drugs, when they finally give that up, that would be the best thing we could do for all of the Latin American countries involved in this. That's one of the main reasons why these children are coming here right now, and it would improve economic growth in those places and make us Americans freer and better off as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Ben, it's an interesting part of the debate. Thank you very much for coming on to discuss it.
Thanks, Kenny.
Africa is about much more than Ebola, and the president is ready to commit tens of billions of dollars to repair and reboot our mutually beneficial trade relationships. But how does Kmele feel about this? Find out in moments.
So I can get some phones rolling in my ride, chilling all alone. Just hit the east side of the LBC on a mission trying to find Mr. Warren G. Seen a car full of girls, ain't no need to tweak. All of you search know what's up with 213. So I hooks a left on 218.
Welcome back. How can the U.S. engage Africa economically? The president has a plan that takes $33 billion, mostly from private companies like Coca-Cola and GE, to try and kickstart some of the fastest-growing economies on the planet. They're in Africa. Keep it at Kmele. Does it add up, Kmele?
Well, interestingly, as you mentioned, $33 billion, about half of it coming from private companies buying stuff in these countries. The other half is a bit more interesting. The president is meeting with about 50 African leaders in D.C. They're talking about all sorts of good things, trying to model good free market values in their own countries. It's about private property and limited government. All those are really great things, but there's also a great deal of nonsense emanating from this conference as well. And the president, along with Bill Clinton and other luminaries, are doubling down on their support for the Import-Export Bank. The president said in an interview leading up to this that there is no doubt that there's a thread that has emerged in the Republican Party of anti-globalization that runs contrary to the party's traditional support for free trade. How the Import-Export Bank, an overseas private investment corporation, became targets of the Tea Party's wrath is strange to me. Well, it wasn't so strange to him. Well, it wasn't so strange to him when he was a senator. He seemed to recognize the Import-Export Bank for what it was, and that is phony cronyism. The Import-Export Bank effectively takes taxpayer dollars and uses it to grease the wheels for U.S. exporters in favored interests. It helps and profits some of the biggest corporations in the United States. It is totally a handout, and it helps them to mitigate the risk of investing in dicey places around the world.
Oh, by the way, you and your wife are small business owners. Have your wheels ever been greased like that? Have you ever been privy to that kind of capitalism, that crony capitalism? No.
Boeing gets half this money, and it's like it's used to underwrite Boeing being able to sell its aircraft to crappy countries that should be spending money on other things besides Boeing aircraft.
It's mercantilist, and it's the same nonsense policy that folks are abiding by when they support stadium investments on part of local city councils. Bad economics, not going to create a benefit for the country giving the money or for the recipient.
Or the entire continent. All right, thank you very much, Kmele. And thank you so much for being a part of our show tonight. Go to our webpage right now for our live web show after hours. It's foxbusiness.com/The-Independents. Michael Malice and Thaddeus McCotter will be there, and hopefully so will you. For Matt Welch and Kmele Foster, thanks for making The Independents a part of your night. I'm Kennedy, wishing you a very good night.